In this video we're going to do something a little bit different. This is just a test drive video. What have I done before this test drive? A lot of things. I put in 180 degree thermostats, replacing the 190 degree ones. I added a fuel cooler to the return line. I put on a new turbocharger, and in the process I also removed the exhaust manifold, put on new exhaust manifold gaskets, and I wrapped the exhaust manifold in header wrap. The new turbocharger is bigger than the old one. I've got videos on a lot of these things. I changed out the motor mounts with polyurethane instead of the stock old rubber mounts, and not going to be covered in this drive, but I've replaced the generator mounts and given the generator a flexible mounting on air springs with polyurethane bump stops in case the air goes out. So we're about to get going on this. I've got a lot of things to test, and we'll find out if any of them work. We got a lot of things to test, so let's go drive and see if I notice any differences. I'm hoping I will. The first thing that's immediately noticeable, even at idle and starting to drive off, is that the engine actually feels smoother in spite of replacing the rubber motor mounts with polyurethane. And that was exactly what I was hoping for with this. It goes against convention to think that polyurethane motor mounts would result in a smoother ride, fewer engine vibrations. But what I was going for with this was a little bit unconventional just in general. I actually expected the engine to be smoother with the polyurethane, and I explained a little bit about this in the video, but my theory was that the rubber motor mounts were letting the engine move around too much, and also that they were probably contacting the frame, and that was ultimately making things worse vibration-wise. Turbocharger is making boost pressure, so that's a good thing. I've seen about 7 or 8 psi so far, and I'm just leaving my driveway like that. Realized I forgot to close the window here, so I'm going to stop real quick and close that. Like it. I feel like I hear the engine more. I feel like I'm hearing more of that nice Caterpillar diesel sound. It's the right noise, it's the right vibrations, and I wonder what level of that might have to do with the exhaust or with the turbo being a little bit bigger and maybe letting some more of that sound through versus the polyurethane motor mounts transmitting that a little bit more. But the mounts are doing exactly what I thought they would do, which is lower the overall vibrations associated just saw 21 psi briefly there. And it's starting to rain. Not that that's necessarily a problem, but if it rains too much, that means I'm parking outside because I won't be able to get back in my shop if that ground gets muddy. That was why I really wanted to do it today. Seeing 21 psi is a good thing. When I put this turbo in, if you watched the video on that, I had to basically guess at the adjustment on the wastegate, and I was a little concerned that I might have guessed incorrectly. And the reality is it's totally a guess. I had nothing to go on, so you can't blame somebody for being wrong if they get it off. What am I expecting for boost? Probably somewhere in that 25 to 30 psi range. If I get that, I'll be happy, but I'm also considering putting a boost controller in. If it comes down to it, that's just what I'm going to do. Coolant's at 154 now, engine is still very much warming up. The reason why I put the 180 degree thermostats in is maybe a little bit unconventional, but so is everything else I do on this bus. If you recall, if you've seen my previous videos on the electric fans that I put in, that's one of my favorite modifications that I've done to the bus. But the thing is that with those electric fans, also came the need for, or also came a complete redesign of how the cooling system worked. And in the stock system, there was this big mechanical fan that was always being spun by the engine. And with that, that meant that you always had an excess of cooling air. And that's not unlike when you've got a tractor style engine with the engine and the radiator in the front. But by changing to electric fans and having the cooling air for the radiator and intercooler being very much on demand, that changes things. That makes it so that you're now looking at having the coolant flow turning on with the thermostat and the airflow also turning on with the thermostat. Whereas if you've got the radiator in the front, you've always got the airflow, and then the coolant flow turns on with the thermostats. So that was something that I was really, that's what I was going for with the thermostats. It wasn't so much that I was trying to lower the temperature of the engine, although I am a little bit, because I'd like it to be a little bit cooler than what it is. But it's that basically now I'm turning on the coolant flow first, and so when the fans turn on, I've already got full coolant flow, and that makes the fans the most effective. I've been seeing somewhere in that 200 to 205 or 210 degrees on coolant temperature on hot days in the summer, and my goal was to get that down to somewhere in the 190s. So we'll have to see what happens. This drive isn't going to be figuring that out fully. Now seeing the coolant temperature up to 174. This is where I watch it because hopefully I don't have any air bubbles in there. I've run into that before on this when I've had the cooling system open. And I think I probably got it bled, but it's not hard for the system to get an air bubble and then have it take a little bit to work out. Interesting thing I'm noticing though is that the intake air temperature is below 100, and that's not a bad thing at all. That's a whole lot cooler than what it was before in general. Normally, even if I was seeing basically at idle, I was seeing well over 100. Exhaust brake, turn signal, and we'll just go on the highway here. I saw it hit 180 and then I saw it go back down to 176. 1.7. So I think that's good for my. I think that's good for my thermostats. Let everything get up to temperature fully before I really get on it here. And I'm just going to go down an exit or two and then turn around and head back home. All right, 30, 31. Okay, there's that boost tick up. Now let's see, does it have more power or not? I'm not sure there. Although the fact that it still has the boost hiccup is a little frustrating. What am I talking about with the boost hiccup? Well, one of the problems that I've had is that at high, let's see, one of the problems I've had is that at higher RPM and high boost levels, that it was getting an overboost fault, and I was thinking that that was probably related because of the turbo, or because of the old turbo, because the wastegate was seized. This wastegate, well, I hope it's not seized. I guess it could have blown off, so that's something I'll have to check. But I can definitely say that the turbo itself is not undersized, or not oversized rather. I'm not having anything with the turbo response or anything like that that makes it seem laggy. Only lag I'm getting really is the boost pressure gauge. My EGTs are down a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit. Well, I don't know, maybe not. I'm seeing, yeah, they're down a bit. Full throttle there, I'm seeing maybe 1150 instead of 1200 or 1250. So that's good. Since I've driven this, and so whenever you have that happen, memory's off a little bit, how things were. I do feel like it's overall smoother. My the transmission shifts have all been good too. Yeah, I do think that my EGTs are lower than what they were before. I got the cruise set at 70, I'm going up a hill a little bit, seeing 20 PSI, there's 22, and I'm seeing under 1100 on the EGT. That seems lower than what I would have had before. And that was part of the goal with this turbo, was that if it was doing what it was supposed to, I would see lower intake air temperatures, I would see more boost for the same fuel flow, and that would lower EGTs. Yeah, I think I can say with confidence that I'm seeing lower EGTs there. What happens if I go up to 75? Because that's now the speed limit. And that boost hiccup's still there. direction is the wind out of today? Let's see if I can pull that up quick. Yeah, I have a crosswind basically right now. The thermostat seemed to be working. My coolant temperature is sitting happy at 197 right now, and that's lower than I would have expected before. I would have expected to see something in the range of over 200. So that's all doing what it should. Going up a hill a little bit. It says 32 psi. Now, 26. EGTs were below 1200 the whole time, so that's good. I'm disappointed about that boost hiccup happening. I'm kind of hoping that the reason for it is that the wastegate reference hose blew off, because if that's the case, then that just means I need to put it on better. And I've got a shot that that's not going to be something I have to deal with. It's really frustrating, if nothing else, because that hiccup basically limits your ability. You can't do full throttle essentially with that. I mean, you can, but having those hiccups is not what you want, and it's losing power every time it does. Saw a little bit over 200 there just briefly on coolant temp. See if I can pay attention on heading back north what the intake air temperature is doing. Right now it's back to 130, so it could just be that the engine hadn't fully gotten up to temperature yet. Turn on my auxiliary fans here for a little bit of extra intercooler action. Alright, let's get lined up here and see if I notice anything. I definitely hear more turbo there. Shift seems smoother. There's a hiccup. This blue fire is kind of getting on my nerves now, because there we go. Now it's giving me something. All right. Things that's annoying with this is that I don't have an actual boost gauge. What I've got is my blue fire on the iPad over here, and that's giving me boost pressure, but it's giving me the boost pressure through a Bluetooth connection, and that Bluetooth connection tends to be laggy, so most of the way coming up the on-ramp there, I was seeing 7 psi, which was nowhere near accurate. some circumstances. I guess under, I'll call it higher part throttle. Right now, going up a slight incline, and I'm seeing 30 pounds boost, which is more than I would have expected before, but I'm seeing 1150 on the EGTs, which is less than I would expect for that much boost previously. So what that really means is that it's more boost for the same fuel flow, which is making the engine run leaner, which on a diesel means that you're running cooler. And all of that's really what I was going for. Seeing 203 on the coolant temp, so I'm not sure. I guess we'll see if it settles down a little bit. I am going on an uphill, and I am going 75. acting up, and me therefore not really being able to get much on boost pressure, well, much on the gauges in general from it, and still having that boost hiccup, then I would call this drive a success. Still hard for me to say still whether the coolant temperature is overall running a bit lower. I think it is. For the most part, it's staying below 200 now, although I'm driving this empty. I don't have anything behind me. The intake temperatures do seem to be a bit lower on the whole. The new turbo definitely is not oversized. If anything, I think I could have gone a little bit bigger. What it does for fuel economy or anything like that, I guess we'll find out. But the fact that I'm seeing lower EGTs and lower intake temperatures tells me nothing but good things. So I think that pretty much everything did what I expected it to. Oh yeah, the last thing I did. A friend of mine sent me a case of AMSOIL Dominator coolant booster, and I put that in. And if you saw that video, that was essentially, well, the least valid test ever because of everything else I changed at the same time. I don't know, maybe that's helping a little bit. I see my coolant temperature went down to 192 there. And after I get back in the shop and let things cool down, I'll have to take a look at the temperature of the, or at the level of the coolant. Maybe it'll have gone down a little bit after burping some, which is just fine. I have more. There's nothing critical. It's really just a question of whether I've got something going on that I can fix with this overboosting hiccup. I know that it's an overboosting hiccup because a while ago I drove this with somebody who's got Cat ET, and he was able to see that the when that hiccup happened, it was giving a boost controller not responsive count, which essentially means that it's overboosting. Your wastegate's not doing what it's supposed to. Wastegate on this is entirely mechanical. It's not that there's any electrical thing going on. It's just that it isn't keeping the boost where it should be. So if I find that hose is popped off, or maybe it's blown up, blown clear apart, then that would be just fine too, because either of those problems are solvable easily. Wastegate itself needs to be adjusted. That is a real pain to do, and I don't know if I really have it in me to try to go in and adjust that another turn or two, especially if I then find out that that was the wrong amount and need to look at it again. If I was going to have it be one way or the other on boost, I think I would have preferred it to be under boosting, because that's an easily solvable problem with the boost controller. But what I did when I was guessing on the wastegate arm setting was I was matching it to the wastegate actuator that existed on the factory turbo. And that's a different turbo. The wastegate should be more or less the same, but still that's not going to be 100% accurate. I'm seeing intake temperatures below 120 degrees now, and so that's pretty good, I would say. It definitely seems like the turbo is running a little bit smoother on the whole. Or not smoother, cooler, which it should, more efficient. I definitely feel like the engine's got some more growl to it now. like I said, I could feel it before, or there were vibrations before you knew when it was running, but not the kind you're looking for. It'll be interesting to see how this thing does on the trip. Both going through the mountains and then also towing something behind it. But I guess I'm going to pull it into the shop here, drain the oil, because that's something I needed to do. And maybe I'll take a look and see if it looks like the wastegate or the wastegate actuator hose has popped off or is otherwise broken. Few sprinkles, but nothing too bad, so I don't think I'll get stuck coming into the shop. At least I hope not. So I think I'll end the video here. Thanks for driving along with me, and let's, I guess we'll see what we find.